Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar. Today we're going to be covering adjustments, security settings, and some shrinkage reports. It's kind of a bit of a grab bag today. They are all loosely related, but there's a couple smaller topics we have not covered yet for Retail Pro 8, and I decided to group them all together today and go through them. So my name is Charlie West. I'm a support technician for Canadian Retail Solutions. We do these webinars once a month, and they are available on our website in the Retail Resources section if you couldn't make it today. I'm going to request, as I do every month, that if you have any questions, just jot them down, keep a pen and paper handy, and we can review them at the end of the webinar. That way we don't get bogged down in questions and we can't make it through the entire presentation. Okay, so first thing we're going to cover today is adjustment memos. Okay, so adjustment memos are Retail Pro documents that allow you to modify the quantity, cost, or price of your inventory. They create a permanent record of the change in quantity, price, or cost, and they are the way that we recommend that any changes to those three fields be made in Retail Pro. Okay, you can make those. You can make an adjustment memo for one or multiple items at the same time, but we're always going to recommend that you group them by the reason. Okay, and we'll get into that in just a minute. So we should also cover that some adjustment memos are automatically created by Retail Pro. For example, when you do a physical inventory and you update it, it creates a quantity memo that records all the inventory quantity changes that your physical inventory made. So each one of those items that was at negative inventory value, it's going to record that it brought them up to zero, or the ones that, maybe you had some in stock or were showing some in stock but didn't scan them, it's going to bring those down. Okay, and those are all done through a quantity memo, so you can review exactly what your PI modified after you've updated. There are three different types of quantity memos, or of adjustment memos. So there's quantity, price, or cost. Okay, they all work very similarly, but there are some important differences, and the way that you report or create a memo is different for each one. So quantity memos adjust your on-hand inventory or on-hand quantity for a specific item. Typically that's used to cover any shrinkage, damaged items, found items, anytime you need to modify the amount of your store or company quantity. Okay, cost memos are used to update the cost of an item. So maybe last month you found out you received a voucher and one of the items was at the wrong cost. Okay, so maybe you had it as $9, it actually cost you $11. It's a month ago, you don't want to go and reverse that one and recreate the voucher, so you're just going to adjust the cost of that one item in inventory so that when you sell it, you report the right amount of profit and margin on that one. Okay, and finally, price memos. So you can update the price of an item for a specific price level, for those of you that have multiple price levels, and I know a lot of you, though, just use one. So some examples of price memos are to permanently increase the price of an item, okay, or permanently mark down an item. All right, so maybe that item's discontinued, you want to mark it down 20%. You can use an adjustment memo to do that, okay? Now, a lot of you might be used to just going into inventory, marking that down in the price field, and I'll show you why you should maybe use an adjustment memo instead. Okay, so let's go through creating an adjustment memo just so that you can see how it's done. So we're going to open adjustments from the top menu and memos from the right. Okay, so the first thing it's going to do is take us to our memos list, and that's all done by month. Retail Pro 8, all your records are listed in here by month, so we can see the three memos that I've created for May. All right, we're going to create a brand new memo. First thing that pops up is choose your memo type, quantity, price, or cost. Okay, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Depending on which one of these fields you need to modify, that's the type of memo that you're going to create. I'm going to adjust the quantity of an item in stock, so we'll choose quantity memo. Okay, so we've got some options here. Since I'm at the main, I can create a memo for any store I wish. I'm going to leave it at store 1. If you're at the store location, then chances are you can just create your memo for your specific store. We've got the associate, so it's already populated with admin, who is me. I'm the logged in user right now, but since I'm admin, I can choose a different associate if I wanted to, as well as reason. So let's get an item on here first. Let's go into inventory. We'll grab a couple items actually. Let's see some that we have quantity of. Okay, so I've added a leather volleyball and a sports jacket. Okay, so let's say we, we were doing a quick cycle count, or for whatever reason, we need to adjust the amount that are showing in stock. One of these items is missing. We identified them as missing. We saw on a security tape that they were stolen. Whichever it is, we need to update our store quantity. So we've got a couple different fields here, okay? The only one we can edit on a quantity memo is the ADJ store quantity, adjusted store quantity. Okay, if I want to change the cost or the adjusted price, it's not going to let me. Okay, and this is a quantity memo. The only thing I can do is change the quantity of this item. Now, because I selected one when I chose the items, it's put in here for one is the adjusted store quantity. This is not the amount that you want to adjust by. Adjusted store quantity is always going to be the new on-hand value you have. So if one of each of these was missing, I have a crazy amount of them. I'm going to put in 2,211 for both. This is test data. That's why a lot of the numbers are pretty funky. Now, you're going to see the rest of these fields update. Okay, so old cost, adjusted cost is still 10. The old price and adjusted price is still 16. But down at the bottom, we have some summaries. So price, the old price for all of the quantity has gone down by $42.73. Okay, so I removed one from stock with a price of $42.73. So my new total selling price for all those items has been adjusted. Same with cost. My cost has gone down $30 in total for that item, and it changes. All right, in total for these items, because yes, one is 10 and one is 20. Sorry. So the total cost for all these items in inventory has been lowered by $30. All right, and then here at the last one is the quantity. So these are all your summary categories for all the items on the memo. We've got an old quantity of 4,424. We've removed 2 from stock for a new adjusted store quantity of 4,422. Okay, so from here, if I tried to update this, information must be entered in the reason field. So you cannot update a memo without a reason. And those reasons can be put in your system preferences to give you some options. It's nice to have consistency across your memos, or you can manually type in a reason if you want. Okay. The other field that you have access to is the comment fields. You can input the comments. I've added the comments field to my info tab. There's also a comments tab where you can put as many comments in as you want. Those are completely free form, where you can type in a special note about this adjustment. So noted okay, noted the theft on the camera, customer barred from the mall, mall. Okay, anything else that you need to include, we can also set in system preferences a requirement for these comments as well. Okay, so now that I've updated a reason, I can update this memo. As soon as I update, that has adjusted the inventory. Okay, so those items will now show one less of each in inventory. And if I was to pull them up, we can see that again. There's our volleyball. We now have 2,211. Okay, the cost and the price memos work very, very similar. You're just adjusting the adjusted store price or the adjusted store cost. Okay. You can add as many items to an adjustment, so we just did 2 there. You can fill it up with as many as you need. You'll see you've also got an option on here for a barcode if you wanted to download some scans from a portable barcode scanner. Okay, next we've got adjustment preferences. So let's cover a few of the different preferences we can choose in Retail Pro when it comes to adjustments. And one of these is incredibly critical that we always discuss with new clients. So under System Preferences and then Adjustments, first thing I want to cover is this section right up here, require a memo to change. Okay, so on my system, we've got quantity, price, and cost all checked off. What that means is that I cannot just go into inventory, even as sysadmin, and change the quantity, cost, or price of an item. I have to go in through adjustment memos. All right, if those aren't checked off and a user has permissions, they can manually edit any of those fields in inventory without a record, which means if one of your staff has the sysadmin access, they could adjust the quantity of an item in stock with absolutely no record. There's no way of identifying, how much was there or how much is supposed to be in there. Okay, there's no record of all, no reason. They could take that nice coat that came in, they could remove one from inventory, and there's almost no way for you to figure that out. Okay, unless you run an on-hand summary every day and compare that against your receipts, you're not going to be able to see that on-hand amount has been lowered without a corresponding receipt for it or transfer or voucher. Okay, now these settings are so important that it actually keeps a record of any time they're changed. So if they were extremely clever, they had the sysadmin access and they came in here and turned this off so that they could modify it, it's going to create a record. Okay, it tells you anytime these settings are turned on or off. All right, so extremely important. We recommend for all new clients they keep this on. And any existing clients, if you check your system preferences and realize these aren't on, it is a really good way to help keep track and keep a record of these changes. Okay, now in here you'll see the adjustment reasons that I had access to. I'd also say definitely put in some reasons. It keeps it consistent when you're reporting. You don't get any 10 different ways to report that something was damaged, and you can organize those all together in your reporting. We've got require a comment. So if you want even more information than the reason, you can require a comment on those memos that staff need to fill in before they can update the memo. And down at the bottom, after I update my memo, do I want to go to former memos, like in former receipts, just a list of all the memos from that month, or go to memo form, open a brand new memo. So if you have to do a lot of memos, or maybe the person that does them does a number of them at a time, you can change that to open a new memo each time, so they don't have to press new. All right, just a little time saver. Those are your adjustment options for memos. Okay. So I'll press save. I'm going to turn on comments actually, and we'll save. The other thing you can do with adjustments is run an adjustment report. Okay, so I've got the reports program open. We're going to open a summary report. Let's go down to adjustments. So there's a different type of report for each one that you can track it. Basically, if you are forcing them to do an adjustment to modify those fields, then you can also report on a summary. So you can cover all the different months at once and view all the adjustments at one time. All right. So if we do let's say we want to see all our quantity change adjustments, we can run this report. Maybe I'll run it for year to date. Oh, that's last year. Now, one important thing is if you've done a physical inventory, your adjustment report for quantity is going to be full of PI adjustments. So I'll show you what that looks like quick. So reason, PI, we've got page and page and page of adjustments, okay? That's because I did a PI to clear out a lot of the test data quantities that were in my system. So if I don't want to view these, I need to filter them out. So I'll run this report again. Review the year to date of adjustments, and this time under my memo source I'm going to select physical inventory and exclude them. Okay, so don't show me any that were caused by a physical inventory. All right, memo source will always be manual if the user has put in an adjustment, and if the system creates an adjustment on its own like a PI, it's going to label them accordingly. Okay, so you don't have to worry that someone could create a memo under PI if that's what you're excluding. So I've got my adjustment quantity, and you could even filter by associate if you wanted to just pull up a specific user's adjustments as well. Okay, so let's rerun this with PI excluded. Oops. Apparently I didn't save that. All right, so now we've got a couple memos. They're organized by date. So I've got one here in April, and then I've got 4 or 5 here in May. So these are the ones that I put in today while I was prepping for the webinar. Okay, so you can see the reason, found inventory, shrinkage, data entry errors, stolen. All right, it's going to create a record for each item in here that was modified. It's not by each memo. And you can see the old quantity, the adjusted quantity, and the quantity difference. So I've got some here I added 5, took away 4, all right, and you can see how that affects your price and your cost of the totals as well. Okay, we've got the associate, so this is the person who was logged in when it was created. As an admin, I could choose a different associate, but I didn't, so they're all listed as admin. Regular employees, if your security settings are set up properly, they should definitely not be able to change the associate that created the memo. All right, so that's how you run a report to view all your adjustments in a nice summary. So that's adjustments. We're going to jump right into users and security. If you have any questions, though, then we can bring those up at the end. So back into Retail Pro. Let's talk about SecAdmin. So under Tools, you'll see a little button here on the right called SecAdmin, or Security Administration. All users and permission settings are controlled in SecAdmin. There's 3 basic components to understand when using the SecAdmin tool. So we've got users, groups, and permissions. Okay, so if we open this up, and it does require a separate login, we've got, first thing that pops up is the Users tab. So this is all the different users that I have created on my Retail Pro system that can log into Retail Pro. We always recommend that every staff member have their own user. Some companies will use maybe a cashier login to track all of the cashier sales. And that's okay, but there are certain situations where it becomes really hard for them to identify who exactly created that specific sale, unless they're requiring, maybe one of the other fields on there. So between associate and cashier, in order to record who that person was. Okay, but for most users, we recommend everybody using Retail Pro has their own login, so they can properly record who created that document, whether it's a receipt or a voucher or an adjustment memo, so that you can track back to, if any mistakes were made. Okay, so this username is attached to every document. The nickname that you put in when creating a user is what shows up on all those documents. Next, we've got groups. So security groups think of them as a collection of permissions, and it's almost always grouped by job function. So if you're point of sale, you might need specific permissions in order to create receipts, sales orders for customers. If you are a back office, you might need certain permissions related to vouchers and transfers. Okay, so your permissions should really be organized by function. There's no reason that someone who works at front of house only should have the ability to create vouchers or edit your purchase orders. All right. They're done as groups so that you don't need to modify each individual user's permissions. So we set up, Retail Pro comes with a stock set of pre-made default groups. You can modify these ones. All right. The permissions are all controlled here in the area. Okay. So for Retail Pro permissions, a lot of these are about tools or specific things that maybe we might use in support, but you don't use very often. But if we open R Pro and then Retail Pro version 8, you can see the permissions that relate to users accessing Retail Pro 8. Okay. So just as an example, under my Managers tab, for Retail Pro 8 and point of sale, they have access to pretty much everything except for exporting a list of customers. Okay, and if we clicked administrators, we'd see that they have access to export that customer list. All right, so that's a good permission there. A good one to talk about. Do you want your managers to be able to go into the customer module and quickly export the entire list of your customer base to Excel? Okay, might not sound like a big deal to some of you, but definitely if you have a manager who is on their way out and they walk out with your entire customer list, that could be a very big issue to you. Okay, if we looked at the point of sale, we'd see even less permissions. So now all of a sudden most of the permissions have been removed. Okay, can't see cost fields. If you don't have the ability to see cost fields in your group, then when you go to view the cost of an item, it's just going to show you asterisks. Okay, so you can't actually see what those items cost. Maybe that's none of your business. All right, so it's totally up to you as the proprietor to determine what security permissions your staff need access to. Now, if you have, I'll give you an example. I created one here for part-time point of sale. Okay, so very similar to point of sale, except for with a few unique changes. So all I did was copy, using this button here, the point of sale group, renamed it as part-time point of sale, and then removed a couple of permissions. Some of those being open cash drawer and global discounts. So if we look at point of sale, you'll see they can open the cash drawer on no sale. So if someone comes in and needs change, they pop the drawer open and exchange it, okay? As well as they can give a global discount. Part-time point of sale staff cannot do that. No option to give a global discount, no option to pop the cash drawer without a sale. Okay, so you can very easily copy one group to create another one if there's not a lot of permissions you want to change. There is a new group button, but you're going to have to go through those permissions one by one, and there are hundreds, if not thousands. Okay, so best to have a look at the existing ones and modify from there. Of course, you can always give the support line a call, and we are more than happy to go through this with you. The permissions can be quite a bit daunting at first. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through creating a new user and adding them to a group. Okay, so we're going to create a new, we're back on the Users tab. Got a couple options up here, Add New User or Properties. So to view an existing user's settings, like Dan, you click on Properties. You can see his nickname, his login name, full name, description if you want to put in their job title, as well as you can modify their password if you're the administrator. And you can see their user class, he's a user. Power user means that you can get into SecondMin and modify users' passwords and create new users essentially. Okay, so he's just a regular user. Store selection. If you want to limit employees to only log in at certain stores, you can do that. And member of groups. So Dan is currently a member of the point of sale group. He gets all the permissions related to that point of sale group. Okay, so let's create a new user. Let's say that we're going to create Charlie. Nickname is Charlie. Description. You could put in assistant manager, give them a password. Maybe you want them to be able to create new users. Let's say if they're a new assistant manager, we just keep them as a user for now, and we'll leave it on all stores, but you could limit them to certain ones. All right, then we've got the managers group. Maybe you want your assistant managers in the managers group. Maybe you don't. You don't have to assign them to a group yet. We can also create the user without putting them in a group. They're not going to have any permissions yet, but that could allow us to maybe copy the managers group and modify some permissions. Okay, so if I right-click on properties, I can change the name, I can add Charlie, and then from here I can go and modify any permissions I need to, okay, to separate it from the managers group. Okay, the last thing I need to do is press save, and we've created that new user. I could log in as Charlie, and I would have access to right now all the manager permissions because we didn't make any changes. I'm going to show you, we've got one here for Chris. Under the properties, they've got part-time point of sale. So you'll see if we exit and we log in as Chris, let's create, already right away you've seen a lot of functions get grayed out because Chris doesn't have permission. If we go to a new receipt, can't change the cashier, the time, the date, cannot add a discount, okay, can't change the store. So very limited account, can add an item to the sale, can't even access the discount percentage button. Oops. Can't add the global discount, okay? So this is a user that's been created as part-time who has very limited access in receipts in order to do, they can do regular functions, adding items and tendering them, but they can't make any discounts or modifications to the receipt. Okay, so we'll cancel this and discard the receipt. So in addition to the global discounts permission, there's another place in Retail Pro that determines how much of a discount a user can give. So if they are allowed to give a discount, you can also set exactly how much individual users can offer. Okay, so if we go into System Preferences, we'll have to log back in as sysadmin. There's a section in sysadmin called Employees. So in here, if you're using defined employees, is a list of all the discounts that each user can give. Okay, I just created Charlie. It's going to put him in there at 100% by default. Okay, so if you want to change that to maybe 25%, you need to do that manually. Admin up to 100. The rest of the staff are all in here at 10%, and poor part-time staff member Chris can't give any discount at all. He's not even allowed to if there was a 10% in here, but we've taken it out just to be safe. Okay, so all these other users could only offer a global discount of up to 10%, even a line item discount. Okay, so that's how the max discount percentage works. Another thing you can do with security is we can run security receipts. So under System Preferences, again, at the very first page here, under Point of Sale, is create a security receipt when. Okay, so this is a way for you to create a record when certain things happen in Retail Pro that may or may not be on the level. Okay, so receipt in progress is exited. Something that happens quite a bit. You might think, why do I want a record every time they cancel a receipt? Well, let's say the customer is about to pay and they give exact change in cash. Customer gives you exact change in cash, doesn't need a receipt, and walks away. You now have maybe $50, and you have a receipt on the screen that they didn't need a receipt, or you have a receipt that they didn't want a printed receipt for. So there's nothing stopping you from discarding that receipt, removing it, and putting that cash directly into your pocket. Okay, there would be no record in Retail Pro that that receipt existed. There would be no record that any money was missing because the sale did not exist. All right. If it was for an actual item, then at the end of the year, you might notice that something was missing, but by the time your physical inventory rolls around, it can be pretty hard to identify that. Okay, so you might want to turn this on to see anytime a receipt in progress is exited. System is rebooted, very similar to receipt is in progress is exited, somebody reboots the system. Okay, just turns it off directly. Maybe they don't have permission to exit a receipt in progress, so they decide to get around that by just turning the system off. It's going to lose that receipt that was in progress and let them log in from the beginning. Okay, drawer is opened manually, so they pop the drawer without a sale. Maybe they do have permission for that, but you want to see a record of it. Okay, maybe kind of curious, why is this happening 10 times a day? Who knows? And manager overrides. So if they're set up for overrides and the manager comes in and overrides and you want to keep a record of that, maybe you need to identify that someone found out the manager override code and has been giving out discounts more than they should be. Whatever reason, we can have Retail Pro create a record of that as well. I'll show you how this works. If I create a new receipt, add some items onto the sale, and cancel it. It's now created a high security receipt. Status was canceled, and it actually shows you what was on the sale at the time. So funny thing, I happen to be missing $40.50 at the end of the night, and I have a high security receipt for $40.50 in here. Has someone discarded it by accident, or is something else going on? All right, so it's definitely a good function. Almost all of our high traffic clients are using security receipts. Finally, let's go over high security settings. So back under SysPref, System Preferences and Employees, we've got high security. settings built in here. Okay, so what is high security? High security set mode logs the user out after each transaction is completed, whether it's set to receipts and sales orders, vouchers, transfers, or memos. As soon as you complete that, you update that transaction, you are logged out. Okay. It requires the next user, or even the same user, if it's the same person, to log back in before they can create a new transaction. Okay, this setting is always recommended when you have multiple staff using the same workstation, okay, on a regular basis. If someone comes into the back and uses it once in a while, then you're fine. But if you have 5 sales staff and only 1 or 2 selling stations, then this is a good one to use to make sure that whoever's logged in is the person who is actually creating that transaction. Okay, you can use short passwords like PIN numbers to make it a bit quicker, and short logins as well. So you don't really want really complicated login names or complicated passwords if you're going to use high security, because it will take them too long to type in each time. All right, so if I turn this on, I'll show you how it looks. Create a receipt. Tender it to cash. It's all completed. I'm logged out immediately. The last user that was logged in, their username is automatically put in here. So if it's the same person, it's not very long. If I was using a really long password, then it would be a pain to log back in each time. But if you have users switching back and forth on the workstation, you use short usernames and pins. That's a good way to make sure the right person is always logged in on the sale. Okay. There's also one more preference in workstation preferences that's related to security, and that's the idle time. Okay, so high security only logs you out when you complete a transaction. If you log in, but then the customer goes to look for something else and you walk away, you can set this to automatically log you out after a certain amount of time. Okay, really high traffic stores can set this really low, because another feature that does is that if you log in and walk away for some reason, the customer can't turn the screen around and click pop the drawer. Okay, kind of a crazy thing, but crazy things are known to happen. It will just automatically log you out, so you need to log back in after a certain amount of time. Finally, let's go over a quick report that you can use to look at the discounts that you and the staff are offering. So I'm going to open reports again. We want a discount summary. Okay, so in here under discount summary, let's have a look at this. I've made a few modifications to this. I've added the cashier up to the front, and I've sorted it by cashier. So instead of sorting it by receipt date, I've sorted it by cashier, because I want to group all the discounts that have been offered by cashier first, as opposed to grouping it by the date on the receipt. Okay. The only other thing you might want to do is add a filter on here so that you can filter out the discount amount. Okay, so I said don't show me any receipts, because by default it'll show you every receipt, including the ones that weren't discounted. I said don't show me any where the discount percentage is 0. I just want to see ones where there is an actual discount put on the sale. So discount of 0 to 0, exclude. Okay, that's the only filter I've got on here. I can run this for year to date. Let's have a look at this report. So because I only ever use admin, there's only one cashier listed on here. You can see there were different receipt dates and the discounts that were offered. So on the 22nd of March, I offered a 100% discount. So the extended price of this item, or this sale, was 0. Okay, on the 30th, I gave a 66% discount and another 100% discount on the 5th of April, and on the 25th, 75% discount. So I've been giving some pretty steep discounts. If I was the owner here, I would be having a quick chat with myself, I guess. But that's a good way to review, what discounts maybe your staff are allowed to give up to 25%. So why are they giving 25%, all the time? Where is the 10%, the 15%? They should be scaling these up if customers are pushing them for a discount or for whatever reason. Why is it always going to the max discount right away? All right, so you can use your discount summaries to review the discounts that are being given. Okay, just make sure you filter them out for only when a discount is offered. So that's your discounts reports. That's a good way to identify if you are over selling any discounts on your sales, and that you might need to look at your security settings. Okay. Finally, we're going to do a quick little bit here on shrinkage protection. So the first thing we're always going to recommend is to set up your security settings in Retail Pro. Force adjustments so that people can't modify price, cost, or quantity without an adjustment memo, without a record. Force those security receipts. If they close a sale, you want a record of that, okay, with exactly what was on there. And force high security. Make sure that whoever created the document is the person who is definitely signed in. Okay? If you don't have high security, people leave their logins on all the time. There's almost no way to prove that whoever created that sale or that security receipt was the person who was actually doing that transaction. Okay? Now, there are a few other things we can do. We would recommend you do some cycle counts. Identifying that you have a shrinkage problem at year end can be pretty costly. Cycle counts are a way of running your physical inventory where you pre-filter it for a certain department or vendor or group of items. So you're only counting a specific area or department of the store. Okay, so we set up a pre-filter so that the PI file, when you create your physical inventory, is only looking at a specific set of items. That way you can count just those items, review if there's any any discrepancies, and let's say you do a different vendor or a different department every month. That's a good way to identify a shrinkage problem early, as opposed to waiting to year end and trying to go back and figure out what's going on. Okay, if you need help setting up pre-filters for your physical inventories, then definitely give us a call or email on the support line. Okay. The other thing you can do, it's not really shrinkage related, but it will help you identify if you have data entry problems, okay, is a on-hand summary looking at negative inventory. So if I go into my report summaries and we're going to print an on-hand summary, so let's go down to inventory, choose on-hand summary. Okay, so this is a report of everything I currently have on hand in inventory. So what I'm going to do is filter it for quantities. Let's say I want to exclude any quantity from 0 to 999 million. So we'll exclude any quantity above 0, basically. So this is going to give me a report of any inventory that currently has a negative on-hand value. Okay, this is a great report to find out if you have data entry errors. Maybe you have a problem receiving vouchers. Maybe you have a problem with your transfers. But basically, I've run this report. I have 3 items in stock where the quantity is negative. So it's in brackets. I have negative quantity in these items. What's happened? Did I miss them on a voucher? Did I not transfer them properly? Are they showing at a different location? Okay, so I've sold these items, but Retail Pro didn't have an amount in stock to remove it from, so it pushed the quantity into negative inventory. All right, great way to identify issues. The other thing you can do is you can run an on-hand inventory report and compare that against your sales from the previous day. I talked about that earlier. It's a bit intensive, but it's definitely one way to help identify if you've got some shrinkage issues with Retail Pro manipulation. Is to compare your receipts from the day before against the on-hand report that you're running. All right, so you can run a regular on-hand report for your positive inventory as well. Compare that against the day before. Does this make sense with what I've sold? Okay. Now, most of your shrinkage isn't going to be reflected in Retail Pro. It's just going to be, missing. It's going to show up as in stock, but it's not on the floor. When you go to count it at the end of the year, you're going to have all this inventory that gets adjusted out. Cycle counts, really the only way in Retail Pro to help identify that. But using your security settings is the best way to make sure that users aren't manipulating Retail Pro so that you don't even get that year-end PI update where all that inventory is brought down. Okay? If someone has permission to manually edit inventory without a record, your physical inventory will not bring that up. There's no way to know that inventory was ever missing in the first place. Okay? That's why your security settings are important. Other than that, you can do regular cycle counts. Those can help identify spots where maybe you need to have some extra staff on hand for certain days, or take some other security measures. Okay, so that's it for today's webinar. Thank you everyone for coming. We'll have another one next month. It is on polling. Okay, so if you're a single store operation, that might not be very interesting to you. There is one the following month on backups that everyone should definitely come for if you can. But the polling one will be great if you're a small chain or a large chain and you want to understand how your polling works, maybe be able to do a little bit of the troubleshooting yourself. Okay. This webinar will go up on our website and be available in the retail resources section. Okay. So thanks everyone again for coming, and now we'll take any questions.